Good afternoon, everybody. Eddie Webb. We are here at the New Media Lab at Mesa Community College, and it's an honor and a privilege today to have our chief, we like chiefs, information officer, Dr. Jess Evans, who is highly regarded leader in digital transformation, business strategies, data science, and cyber security, to name a few things. She has led many tech initiatives here at Maricopa in her work in Vanderbilt, Arizona State University. We want to welcome you to our show, and I'm going to have Tawn introduce herself.
As Dr. Webb mentioned, my name is Tawn, Dr. Tawn Hauptli, and I'm really honored and privileged to be here today with you, Dr. Evans.
Well, thank you both so much. It is quite an honor, and I appreciate that. I just want to make sure I give a shout out to my alma mater, Case Western Reserve University. That is where I started in higher education, and it is a special place in my heart. So I also got my PhD there, so just didn't want to not call that school out. So thank you for the kind introduction.
Hey, that's cool. I want to give a shout out to Butte Community College in California. Where'd you go?
And then there's Santa Rosa Junior College in California, and Sonoma State University in California, where I got my start, and was there with the Center for Critical Thinking. It was just a really great liberal arts college that allowed me to think expansively and taught me how to think as opposed to what to think. It was brilliant.
That's awesome. Case did the same thing for me. And so it's always important that we acknowledge the past and appreciate where we came from and how we got here. And so I appreciate the introduction. Thank you so much.
And we can still say critical thinking, right?
I think so.
Okay.
That one's still allowed.
All right, everybody. Once we book a guest, we put a team together that submit 13 questions, and we create a narrative of those questions, because our show is built around being informative and meaningful. We do not do gotcha podcasts. So again, thank you. Question number 1. You have an amazing professional record and credentials. What brought you to us here at Maricopa?
Thanks, Eddie. There's actually, it's quite an interesting dynamic. When I had, and thank you for the acknowledgement of the accomplishments. It's all of hard work. That's how you get there. So how I got to Maricopa, originally I was raised in Northeast Ohio, and quite a grit town, very gritty, steel workers, blue collars. And I was taught from a very early age, never give up. Never give up. No matter what challenge is presented to you, no matter what person tries to knock you down, and all the bumps and bruises I have from being knocked down are extensive. But they're also a badge of honor. I've learned a lot. And in coming to Maricopa, I was seeking an opportunity. I had been to Arizona in 2018, worked for ASU, fell in love with the state of Arizona. I mean, I felt like a sense of home when I come here. Like my soul just takes a breath and goes, oh, thank God you're here, right? So there is an energy in Arizona that is unmatched, and I've been all over this country and world. There's only a couple sacred places in the world, and in my heart, Arizona is one of them. And so when I was working in Tennessee, it was just not the right place for me, not the right vibe, not the right energy in genuine sense. And every day I felt so uncomfortable in my own skin. And that was the culture that I was in, and I recognized I'm not a good fit. I'm not. I'm somebody who really try to look forward, but without forgetting the past. And so when we bridge those dynamics, different cultural things occur, and it just was not the right place for me. So my children, I have 3, but 2 of them are attending U of A in Tucson, and I really didn't like being on the other side of the country from them. So I was trying to find a place where I could come back to Arizona. And honestly, the universe kept shoving Maricopa in my face every day for months. Most of my colleagues were like, hey, did you know Maricopa's got a CIO job? And I'm like, oh, okay, sure, yeah. And then they're like, huh. Then another couple of weeks, hey, have you talked to anybody about the Maricopa CIO job yet? No, nobody's called me, and it's okay. Maybe I'm not part of their, it's all right. Like 3 more weeks later, hey, have you talked to Maricopa yet? There was like this very strong, like you could just feel the universe going, young lady, you are not listening to me, and you need to go talk to people from Maricopa Community College. Like, I could just feel it. And so when I went through the interview process, I knew instantly that that's where I need to be. It was just a matter of the right feeling. And every day that I've been here since, no imposter syndrome, no bad energy. We have a lot to accomplish and maybe advance, and maybe streamline. There's some opportunities, but what keeps me here is that it is a very large, complex, critically important service that this community college system provides to the entire county of Maricopa, the state of Arizona, and the country. And I want to be a part of that.
That's great.
That's great.
Watch those hands, my
Sorry.
Banging the table already.
I'm sorry.
She said, I got some power. I got something to say.
So our next question here, Tawn.
Yeah, well, I want to acknowledge the energy of this place as well. And coming from Northern California, I came here in 1993, and I do love Arizona, and it's really become home to me, even though I still have ties in California.
Mm-hmm.
Arizona's my home.
Yeah.
And I am fortunate to have my lovely daughter-in-law visiting here, Yoch Hauptli. I just want to give a shout out to her.
Yoch has the best hair,
She
everybody. I know you may not be able to
does.
see it, but it is a
She
beautiful
does.
head of hair.
And that smile.
Oh, my
Look at
goodness,
her right there.
right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, she's got a career in the industry of animation, and she's actually from Canada and has had a very, significant career there. And lately, as we've been talking, there's been some challenges that she's experienced in her industry and has been having a difficult time getting employment in the industry. So she had a question that I thought might be relevant here, and it has to do with AI. So the question is, how does one stay competitive in a world with AI? How do we as educators help prepare our students to adapt and to take advantage without making themselves obsolete?
Yeah, excellent question. Yes, genuinely. It's actually quite a conundrum for a lot of professions. So speech writers, technical writers, a lot of the people in the creative realms are very curious about a computer system that has intelligence, right? So artificial intelligence has been on this planet since the 50s. It's not new. What's new in this world is the use of large language models, which are the big engine behind artificial intelligence. When you hear the word generative AI, it means what is the most probable answer that I can give you based on the question you asked me, relevant to the data I have at my disposal. That's what generative AI boils down to. It is the largest probability engine we have ever had. If you noticed, anybody who took statistics, I said probability, not truth. So right now, our generative AI systems are in their infancies. Think of it as a human. We would like to acknowledge as human, the older you get, the wiser you get, hopefully. Sometimes that's for some, sometimes not for others. But in general terms, the older you get, you're wiser because you've learned. Large language models are written in code to learn and adapt. And if they are told it is incorrect, they make that adjustment and they keep that data and then they continue to learn. What they've done is they've been able to generate massive amounts of data and store them and then make most probable solutions for the questions. So it has gotten so well trained that you can say, please draw me a picture of a cat with one green eye and one blue eye and make sure that the fur is a tricolor fur. I mean, you can say all of this and it will be able to scour all the examples that it has across the planet and then render something to you and say, is this what you want? Then you would go back and say, oh, I liked that, but now make them two blue eyes. But what we'll find is when you do that, the engine will generate a completely different image. You're like, wait a minute. I wanted the exact same image. I just wanted two blue eyes. And the reason it does that is because it went back out and said, with this new requirement of two blue eyes, what's the most probable image I should bring back, which is different than the original request. Why do I bring up this example for you? The engines aren't intelligent enough yet to replace your jobs. And the dynamic of understanding human intelligence and how we interpret it, it's still learning. It's still far out. But what has happened is corporations who are always looking for ways to help shareholders, it is the capitalistic nature, whether you like it or not. These are just facts. It's no opinion here. We are driven by shareholders, which demand investment, which demand profits, which would demand growth. In order to do those things, you have to find ways to leverage economies of scale and operational efficiencies. So businesses, while it may not be perfect yet, are leaning in this way because they believe a human resource is not as valuable as something that they could automate. It is a philosophic principle that is concerning in this trend. And how does your generation and or anyone else who's working in the creative field overcome it? You have to partner with the evil side. Sorry. We have to help train the technologists about what responsible innovation is, not just innovation. And when we look at responsible innovation, if we were to prioritize responsible innovation, we wouldn't be eliminating jobs, we'd be empowering them, and we would be giving you pathways for you to be more empowered in your job by artificial intelligence instead of less powered in your job, which is how you're feeling right now. And I can understand that feeling because it's happening to a lot of my children who are looking for jobs. I just had this conversation with my son yesterday. Mom, one of my friends told me it took 230 different applications just to get an internship. He goes, why is it that? He goes, was it that way when? I said, well, no, it wasn't that way. I said, but what's happened is they've used artificial intelligence now to weed out all the applications. Humans don't even read it anymore. So what's happening to our HR professionals? Are they also being automated out of a job? And is a probability engine the best way to evaluate the value of a human? I'm not quite sure I'm sold yet, even as a technologist. So your best advantage is to make sure you understand how AI works and why it works that way, and then make sure you can leverage that for your strengths and lean into the positive. Your AI is not going to go away, and so it is and I actually am an advocate for AI in responsible places. There are good things about it, and there are problems that we're going to be able to solve that we've never been able to solve for, and that is the purpose of that. And having better compute is important so that we can solve bigger problems. But you can't shy away from it. You've got to embrace it and figure out how to make it work for you.
It just sounds so ominous, and it can be fear-inducing.
It can be, and I appreciate you say that, Tawn, because unfortunately that is how, there's only two ways to get something done, through fear or through influence, and positive influence. And unfortunately right now in our culture, fear is winning out.
I hope as the listener, you really take time to digest Dr. Evans' answer, because it's very, very descriptive, on point, and critical for us to understand the foundation of how we're going to build AI into our curriculum in the future. We can dive into the corporate motive and benefit that they see from AI, which is to empower people who are not necessarily the originators of innovation and art and creativity. And by pushing some buttons on a computer, or they're sitting at the table with the other artists who originate that. And I think in that area right there is where the game is played. Because as these images start to flood themselves into the marketplace, they're going to take on a certain look and a certain kind of flavor about them, that the original artist. And that's where corporations are going to have to decide, where they want to be. At the same time, slogans like "just do it," is about, that works too, right? So it's going to come down to the individual company about how they want to brand themselves, because I think that's one of the most important things. I want to move on to this second question. How would you categorize our barriers to onboarding some of the best technologies used in higher education today?
And I see there's a couple follow-up questions with that. So for our listeners, the question is contextualized through curiosities around lack of technical acumen, if there are financial limitations, or both. So that's the full question. So when you look at this, technologies in higher education there are so many. And it is a special industry. So I've had the pleasure to work in multiple industries. And so my lens for this answer is informed from many years of experience, the first half of my career not in higher ed and the second half in higher ed. And the barriers to onboarding some of the best technologies in higher education are humans, human beings, and fear. It's not necessarily financial, lack of technical acumen. It is the lack of understanding these services and solutions and how they can benefit us. And when people have fear about a new technology because it's hard or it's complex or it genuinely makes their lives harder instead of better, the resistance to new technology is often fear-driven and human-driven, not necessarily technologically driven. And that's very consistent in higher education because that's not consistent in corporate America.
But we've seen the movies, right? We've seen Terminator.
The Matrix is real.
The Matrix, Terminator, and
Sure.
Of course, the feeling that what is believable is what is traditional, and that we're going to lose our humanity if we turn it over to the robots, to the technology.
You know, I think about that situation quite frequently, and what I would love to say is that we have an opportunity here as human beings to lean into this technology, figure out how to make it more responsible, and actually empower and make our lives better, either for the underserved or maybe disabled. And if there are ways that we can connect people in a more human way through technology, I believe that there is a real advantage there. What would this world be like if we weren't really in a capitalistic nature and we just did things out of the benefit of human nature? I'm wondering if we can automate some things and free up our consciousness to lean into higher, better served areas and let the technology take care of the mundane in order to elevate our thinking is what I'm hoping technology can do for us in the long run. And that's why I stay in this area. And so for financial institutions and for that question, it's humans that are the problem. And I don't mean in a negative way. It's just that's the barrier. You asked what the barrier is? It is fear in human beings.
Mm. We sort of have this fluctuation of the bigger district philosophy and policy around technology. Let's take a question that gets us into the classroom.
We always strive toward efficiency. And one phrase that I've heard recently in a variety of areas in higher ed is that we want to give our students a consistent experience, right?
Yes.
And sometimes in my worldview, consistency isn't always aligned with creativity and critical thinking, that in our quest to make things uniform so that we make the experience consistent for our students, our learning management systems, our enrollment systems, you name it, put X there. I'm concerned about the lack of opportunity for students to be creative and critical thinkers.
You're worried about the students because you believe that a standardization would stifle that. Am I interpreting that correctly?
That's right. That's
okay.
One of the concerns I have is we're using technology and again, learning management systems, what we consider best practices, that some of that innovation might be lost, that academic creativity and critical thinking that an instructor might bring to the table, lost because we're told this is the way to deliver the information and this is the expectation of what the student will produce. So then with that follow-up, how can institutions leverage technology to support faculty and students in meaningful, innovative ways without defaulting to rigid standardization that might stifle intellectual exploration?
It's a great question. It is the number one question on every higher education campus everywhere. So this is one area where Maricopa is not unique. Yay! And I say that because it is a concern for everybody. In my earlier responses, I'm advocating for responsible innovation. What I haven't touched on yet is the balance of innovation. The way our current world is designed is that things cost money. Money is a construct we have created, and in order for us to advance in technology, it costs money. when we want to use new things like generative AI, or we want to lean into advancing technologies, like I'm currently focused on studying quantum and what it's going to do for solving real problems in the world. As a side note, we'll touch on that later. But that is so far out there. In order for us to bring an economies of scale, we have to at least have a fundamental baseline to start from. So when we talk about standards in higher education, at least in my leadership, my standards are what is the one configuration that we all use, and start from there, which won't stifle anything. But if I can say we all use X thing, we can buy that through buying power, buy in bulk, but that doesn't stifle. We have to have a balance. So we must say, once we have this baseline, what do we put on top of it? And that's where all the faculty have to come in and say, these are my use cases. These are my use cases. And then we can design services and solutions on top of a baseline. So we like to use the word standardization. And yes, from a Webster's dictionary, it does make sense. But that is actually a fear-striking word for every faculty member, at least in this country, that I've met. And so it's my responsibility to understand why it's fear and find better ways to improve that for faculty. I love that every college in Maricopa's system has a Center for Teaching and Learning. I'm so excited about that. What I'm noticing is, at least from my vantage point, and I'm hoping that I can be educated differently, but my current observation is that those groups don't work together across each college. And I have visited every single college. I've visited with all the technology people. I've visited with every single president. I physically have been on every college campus since I've been here, because I want to know, what is it like a day in the life at each school? And I can attest, there are some beautiful differences. Some of them are just cultural. Some of them are programmatic. Some of them are just physical layout design. But each college campus does have a unique flavor and culture. And so you must ensure that any standards, or if you want to use the word baseline, foundation, figure, whatever Webster word you want to use, what can we all share and then build to invoke that creativity? But you need to get to standards at some place. You really do. I have listened to our students in every board meeting and every other student organization that I've been able to connect with, and they want that consistency. They are dying for it. They want to be able to go from one college to the next. They perceive us as one, not 10. Regardless of our marketing, regardless of our website, our students look at us as Maricopa. Yes, they are a proud artichoke, or yes, they are a proud. But my point being is that I think that Maricopa has a beautiful mix of individuality, but an opportunity where they're missing to leverage their economies of scale. And so I just encourage our faculty to open their minds and release their fear and be more of a partner and not a roadblock, because it's more for our students, not for us.
Well, our chancellor 3 ago tried the one Maricopa model.
Oh, no. Can I please jump on that?
Yeah.
Because that's not what I'm advocating.
That's a really good thing to unpack here.
This is a great thing to unpack.
Yeah.
It is my philosophical lens that an organization structure is only necessary because we have an HR function that requires us by law to make sure we're treating our humans appropriately. That's why we have HR. They are necessary. So our HR, I know you're just like, do we really need it? Yes, absolutely. We need HR. That's why it's called human resources. They're there for our humans. So we have to put structure in place to be able to hold accountable people or make sure that our humans are not being mistreated. That aside, we can still operate as a community. Why do we have to have a reporting structure or an authoritative structure? Can we model a community lens where we support each other and we call our neighbor and borrow a cup of sugar from one college to the next? Doesn't everybody have a kitchen in their house? Hopefully you do. Some don't, to be fair, acknowledged. But if we all have a kitchen, why would we buy 10 refrigerators if we really only need one? Genuinely. It just is an analogy.
No, it was wonderful because my daughter was doing dual enrollment when she was in high school, and she graduated in 2021. And when she was taking dual enrollment courses, she had to take them at Chandler Gilbert. I couldn't use a system at Mesa in order to enroll her. I had to physically go to Chandler Gilbert in order to enroll her, even though I was faculty, even though I worked here. And so some of these automations and exactly what you're saying, some of these baselines, it took the pandemic to create those conditions to make that possible. And that was a good thing. So I think some of those things that we don't consider, you're making the case for right now.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the one Maricopa, the strategy of what it was designed was a very healthy and positive thing.
Agreed.
It was the pushback, not from faculty and staff. It was, our executive employee group that wanted their own sort of identities. I have learned over the years of doing this podcast, because I am not at the table, that you are. Sometimes the information I get is incorrect. And I just want to say that straight out. But that's, having been on the Senate a couple times, that was the narrative that I heard. And I knew Glassford I knew him and spoke with him. I liked the part of the one Maricopa that he was trying to design, like to enroll anywhere. The basic stuff I think we should have done. Can you go ahead and tell us about your quantum? I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say about this.
So, this is a side project for me outside in my free time, which I have very little of, to be fair. As soon as I leave here, I drive straight to the airport and get on a plane. So that's kind of like my life. So, why quantum? Why do we want to lean into it? Why just do you even care?
Sorry, just for the ignorance of us, what is quantum?
Oh, no, I'll go there.
Okay.
So, no, but I appreciate you asking. It's a physics principle. Okay. Its principle is, and I'm going to just use simple words, not academic words, only because I am truly not the expert, and I don't want to insult any physicist who is studying this. So there's my disclaimer. I'm not a physicist, but I am a technologist. And what I see available for quantum, the quantum theory allows, in movies, I'll use that, quantum leaping. Okay, you ever watch that? In theory, oh yeah, Tawn's like, yeah, that's my show. So with that, so you understand. So quantum leaping, while it's sensationalized, the fundamental principle is that we exist here and we exist everywhere. It's really hard to wrap your mind around, but I know, look, her mind just exploded. She was like, oh my God. So quantum theory is not a linear process. It's so complex. How do I simplify this? In computing, I'm going to boil it down to computing. So the physics is, we can have this cup of glass right here, and then this glass can also be on the moon. And so that there is no limitation of your physical world, that the construct of gravity and matter are just a little bit different. So going into the compute area, what it does is it restructures the algorithms to allow for speeds we have not been able to see yet in processing. These quantum chips that are being designed, and services and solutions, the power they have, I'm so excited. And this is why, because if we can get this great power in the compute, I may be able to solve true, like, genetic challenges that we have, disabilities, the complicated math when you have to break down the DNA structures and look at every tiny single element of our DNA and then try to reverse engineer solutions out of that. When our researchers are looking at trying to solve health problems, genetic problems, global problems, when we're trying to look at how can I get better propulsion systems, how can I get all of these problems that we can't quite scratch the surface yet are limited because we don't have enough compute power. Because right now those jobs, I say jobs, and for those of us listening, I'm doing my little air quote thing, jobs. There is a computer program, that's what I'm calling a job, that will run in order to calculate these fantastically mathematical, complicated problems, which is fantastic. Some of these jobs can take a month to run. Quantum, 2 seconds.
Wow.
So think about the advancements in education and research that we could get by leveraging quantum computing, right? So my oldest and I had this epiphany when he was 16. We were here in Arizona. He was a Red Mountain High School student. He is studying quantum. And I have been blessed by very highly capable, intelligent young children who, if you were to ask them, Mom, what's your number one job? My job is to raise good adults. That was what my job was. I'm very proud to say I have very good adults, but what that means is that they're very independent, and I don't hear from them as much anymore, but that's okay. But my son and I, when he was sick, Tawn was just, sorry, I didn't mean to call you out, my bad. My son at 16, he said, I want to study dark matter. I said, great. So he did a research project. He was in AP research in sophomore year, and we're going through it together. And so our dinner table conversations are always very nerdy and sciencey. And so he came to me and he said, Mom, we have a problem. I said, what is it? He goes, I can't study dark matter anymore. I said, why not? He goes, because we don't have enough compute power in this world to actually really get to the truth. So I'm going to switch and study quantum so I can build better computers so that then maybe we can solve dark matter. That's not my thinking. That's his thinking. I'm very blessed by that human. And so he got a honors scholarship to U of A, and he's studying physics down there. But that's why we want to do quantum. That's what it can do for us. The possibility and being open and free and not fearful and looking at how we can leverage it for good. I just wish more people would do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a great story. Keegan and I helped CTLs. We built out, 4 new media labs. We had visited every college campus under Maria Harpenerick and our provost, Carla Fisher. This is before COVID. And as we were doing that, because we're student facing, we're not faculty facing, with the studio you are in is for students. And as we were, explaining, and as we were explaining that, I was already asking the question, what's next? Mm-hmm. And people would just have this kind of blank stare. Well, now we know what's next on the other side of COVID, which is AI. Mm-hmm. And I remember my good friend and elder Dwayne Big Eagle from the Osage Nation in Oklahoma wrote this poem about physics. I can see him now smiling in full dance costume in front of the roundhouse on a Sunday afternoon. Scientists have finally discovered the intimate details of our lives are influenced by things beyond the stars and beyond time. My grandfather knew this. And as you explain quantum, it runs deep in very many indigenous cultures. And my brothers and I would talk about how our cell phones have sort of interrupted, when you're sitting around and you need to call your brother. And you call your brother and your brother says, wow, I was just thinking about you. It's that level of energy and intuition that connects us to the real life forces, not money, not gold, not government, our humanness that we're talking about. And so people are learning, as Dwayne Big Eagle's grandfather knew, how do we quantify that sort of experience? And that's where we're at. But it takes people to, with an open mind and stuff, to go there, right? These are the discoverers. These are the innovators. And that's what this new media lab is about, is to create space for people to discover. And I think that's the one thing that gets lost in all of this is the discovery phase of what technology can give us. Anyway, let's get to another question.
Well, and Dr. Webb, I'm thinking a level of intuition, spirituality, and faith in things, and faith in the human condition, and faith in the possible. Just as you were talking, that's what was running through my head.
I agree. That's exactly what the opportunity is, right there. And we can blend it and balance it.
Yeah, this is exciting. N. Scott Momaday wrote in his book, Man-Made of Words, that, the church, the building of the church, the brick and mortar of the church is just a physical extension of the internal spirit. So it's like we constantly have to create something outside of ourselves that's tangible to reflect the magic inside of us. These are the people that are going to excel. Stanford, Harvard, because they have access to funds to create opportunities of discovery like NASA, and I hope Maricopa keeps this in mind, the excitement, the possibility of what we can do as we're constantly talking about budget cuts and now the DEI dismantling. And we have to remind our colleagues and that we're here to discover and expand. We're not here to shut it down and shrink. That's not what we're here for. And we'll talk about things like, well, our problem is people. We have to pay too many people. No, we don't make donuts and sell them. We teach. We have to. We don't. You know what I'm saying? We're not making. We don't get money to make products to sell in the market.
Correct.
Our product is thinking and people and building our citizens in a way that is healthy. So anyway, I just see how all of this quantum, I love this area. If I was younger, I'd go back and do a study myself. But
absolutely. Watch your hands, Eddie.
Yeah, I know. I'm getting ready to, I'm getting ready to go fishing instead. Hey, can you talk to us about the triage, the challenges that you have on your plate, and what would you say is your highest priority?
Wow. Well, as politely as possible, Maricopa has a massive challenge, and it is that everybody thinks we have to do things 11 ways. Leaning into the standardization evil word. We're going to remove standardization. Let's just talk about opportunities. What are our opportunities? We have some budget challenges. Yeah. Okay. Whether we like it or not, we are a federal entity. We receive federal funds, and that is what qualifies you as a federal entity. We must comply with the law, period. We are not going to break the law. We will abide by it and follow it. Which, if the law is not something that every human agrees with, causes consternation and fear. The biggest challenges at Maricopa, the biggest triage I see, is a lack of unification in our humans. We're here for our students. Eddie, you just said it beautifully. Our business is education. Why we are quibbling over some smaller things, I'm befuddled, genuinely. As someone who is a futurist and sees the vision and a very big systems thinker, so my PhD is in designing sustainable systems. So I have been trained to look at things as a collective system and try to find sustainable ways to improve and make it better. That's my whole degree. When you look at the Maricopa system, the lack of unification in the mission is a fundamental disconnect. The sense that the identity is strictly only at the school. While I am an advocate and I recognize those nuances and those cultures at the school, we all do the same thing. And it is okay if we want to do it slightly different. There may be a pedagogical driver for the classroom. There may be improved learning outcomes that may be structured differently. All of those things should not be hindered by technology because that is the choice of the faculty. And the technology does not hinder you to make those choices at all. But unfortunately, we want to use it as an argument that it does without actually proving or trying that it doesn't. And therein lies the problem. So the triage, the biggest challenges, we all got to unify and stop quibbling about budget. And I know everybody's, they're like, oh, very easy for you to say, you're in district office. Yeah, no, I got budget cuts. And I have to abide by the same as everybody else. And if we think that we're better than one or the other, that is the cultural killer that is hurting us the best. What happened to the sense of the greater good? And in higher education, I'm seeing it get dismantled every day, and it just breaks my heart. So Maricopa, I challenge all of you. Put the greater good above your own personal ego, and let's see what we can do together.
Love it.
I've been so mesmerized by what you're talking about that I haven't really been looking at some of the questions. If there's anything
Tawn, while you're looking for our listeners, I am answering all these questions off the top of my head. I did not get them ahead of time. So bear with my answers, please. And I didn't have any time to prepare.
That is intentional.
Of course.
We want you to be authentic.
It's raw and authentic, everybody.
It's wonderful too. And what I love about being in this space, and I'm so grateful to Dr. Webb for inviting me in, is that we really get to learn from our guest. I have learned and understood and, walked away in awe of the guests that have come here. Just been so privileged and honored. And I'm listening to you. Again, you see me over here just shaking my head, just going, wow, I am so glad she's here. I am so glad.
Me too.
I guess the biggest thing that's standing out to me is the concerns about cyber attacks, and the identity theft and the ways that we have to be hyper vigilant. So is that something you would like to speak to?
More than ever. So thank you for asking. I talked a lot about fear, and there is an element in the cyber world where fear is real, and it should be honored. It should not be skirted off to the side because you're inconvenienced to hit yes in your Duo app. It should not be skirted aside from not doing the right process of vetting our vendors to make sure they have the most secure products, just because it's easier. It should not be put aside because it's inconvenient or complex. No longer do we live in a world where that is afforded. The risks are significant. What you see in the movies about cyber criminals is a watered down version. They don't want to tell you the truth of how scary it really is and what we can and cannot do. I caution everyone in Maricopa, please be mindful of your data, of your students' data, your personal data. Please be mindful that when we put cyber practices in place, it is not to make your life difficult, it is to protect academic freedom. This is crucial. I am a huge proponent and advocate for academic freedom, always have been. I will never let technology get in the way, but I will also not let a faculty member hold me hostage to academic freedom for a lack of a proper technology solution. Because it is ego-driven, we have to protect our data, or else we will not be in business. Cyber criminals are real. They are everywhere. You will never physically see them, but you will feel them hard if they grab your data. Data is an asset. It is a revenue stream. It must be treated as such and protected. Cyber is so advanced now, and quantum will just make it harder without, I don't want to be a fearmonger here, but I do want to make sure I illustrate my point. It's not made up. It's not false. They can get your stuff at any point. Doesn't matter. The privacy laws are not protective enough. So please be vigilant. Do we have problems here? Yes. Do I want to share them? No. Do I have solutions to mitigate? Yes. Have I informed all of the senior executives of what those are? Yes. They are reviewing them, and we are strategically looking at them to put mitigations in place to protect our business, our students, and our academic freedom, which is necessary in order to do our jobs. And if I do not create secure spaces for your academic freedom, a cyber criminal can come and destroy this thing in a nanosecond. So we've got to put the protections in place so that we can do our jobs.
Thank you for that. Earlier, you mentioned that we are a federal designation, or I'm not.
I can explain that. Mm-hmm.
But what I wanted to ask was, what was the term, real quick? You said we're
federal agent.
Okay, so we're a federal agent. So under the current environment that we live, does that mean that the federal departments have access to our data?
No.
Okay.
Good question. Let me explain the context of the federal relationship. So federal grants, student loans from the U.S. Department of Education, those are federal loans. We receive those federal loans, or students receive those federal loans. And it is critical for our business, for our students to be able to get educated. When you receive federal funds, either in the form of financial aid or a grant, you are an agency of the federal government. You receive the money. So the federal government reserves the right to provide conditions for which they give their money out. If you are a recipient of federal funds, you must follow the law, plain and simple. And if the law says, thou shalt do X, that is what we have to do, or the federal government can choose to no longer provide those funds, for which we cannot survive without them. And that is the conundrum we are in.
Right, but I mean, they don't
have any access to anything. Yeah. It's strictly a funding relationship.
Until they create a line, and I love the fact that you use biblical terms. In the future world, there'll be a line that says, thou shalt not receive funds unless we have access to all your data. Is that possible?
Oh, God, I hope not. God, I hope not. But
bringing God into it again.
It's
sorry,
man. It's
yeah,
just the way.
I mean, God and I have an excellent relationship, and we have a very candid and frank relationship, and it's a very colorful language experience when I talk to God. So, He knows me in the truthful way. So, I just can't not have it come out. So, anyways, federal government and access to data. Let me get a little nerdy on you. GDPR in Europe was designed to specifically prevent that. We have no said measures in the United States. So they do not have access to our data right this second, at least in an obvious way. Cyber criminals can get access to our data. Nobody's safe. Right. We just take the best measures we can to mitigate risk. But our federal government does not have direct access. And nor have they requested it. They just want us to follow the law. And that's the situation we're in right now. Yeah.
Great answer. We want to thank you for taking time to come and talk to us here at the New Media Lab at Mesa Community College. It's an honor and a privilege to have you as our guest.
Absolutely. What an honor to have you, to get to know you. Of course, the title might cause us to see you as someone who is a little more stoic, or the person in that position a little more distant, and to have someone who really, in my mind, understands the human condition, understands your role, understands the opportunities that your office provides for teaching and learning and for bettering lives. That just gives me great comfort. So thank you for being here, for choosing Arizona again and choosing Maricopa.
I am so grateful. Thank you for having me. I want to do one little more call out to all the faculty at Maricopa. I welcome your thoughts and conversations. It is only through intelligent banter can we get to the right solution and not divisive finger pointing or throwing things over the wall. I'm here for true partnership. So I offer that to all of you. I'm here for true partnership, which means it's a give and take relationship. It's not a take. And there is a perception that maybe district office has done that in some capacity, where we maybe district office has come and said, oh, thou shalt. That is not the sentiment of this current executive team. In fact, quite the contrary. At the highest level, from the chancellor and all the way down, presidents and VPASs and everybody, the sentiment is truly partnership. They want it. Now we just have to model it. So I want to model it with faculty, and I want to lead the way. I can't not be a leader. I've learned that since I'm 2 years old. Sorry, I'm just going to lead. I resisted as much as I possibly could. I tried not to, but I just get shoved there. So I say, okay, I accept this, and I will lead in a way that people want to follow, because they will self-select, not because I'm going to mandate them. So I challenge the faculty, come be a partner with me so that we can make it better.
Dr. Evans, you are truly a world-class educator, thinker. As Tawn has said, I mean, we were just super, super grateful to have you here. In my 26 years, or however many, I can't remember now, what I've seen is we bring in super talented and thoughtful people at the high level, and then how it gets down into middle management or whatever. those people don't bring the same sort of enthusiasm and open-mindedness, and they get very territorial and silos. And it's sort of sad to me to watch somebody, a brilliant leader, not have the culture below them to articulate where they're at. And I hope Maricopa gets better at that. I just finished the performance success training. And so all the things we talk about in there are just, I love it.
That's
I
great.
love everything about it. But then I come back to school and then I see these people in these positions. They don't share those values. It's very frustrating because they have their own way of doing things. And that can be frustrating. But anyway, well, that's another podcast maybe down the road as we get into some of this stuff. So I just want to say to you, my dad's language, Tawn, Ayaski, Kali Ehiliga, Eddie Webb, Tawn, may the Unuklanai always look over you. And I want to, again, thank you for being our guest. I hope folks will listen and reach out to Dr. Evans to speak with her more and her team about how to partner. Hawa, dona do kahai. Remember, take care of each other out there because we are all we have. Hawa.
Thank you.